Welcome back to Stu Structures. We're here for video 5 of the Weaver train station, so stay tuned. So welcome back, like I said, and thanks for coming back and sharing this time with me. I do appreciate it. And welcome to all my new subscribers out there. I seem to be getting a few every week now. It's picking up better than it did originally a few years ago when I got started. Maybe the word's getting out there that I exist in this world. I don't know. But we are going to continue on with the Weaver train station. We have the roof to do. We still have a whole bunch of trim on this to do. We got to finish that turret on top before I can build the roof around it. And then we got platforms. We've got a wooden stoop or a porch off of one door, and we have a stone porch off of another door. And there's just still plenty to do on this. So let's jump into this and see how far we can get in this video. Now last week we left this overhang in this kind of a situation here, and I need to get some trim and paint on this. I want to finish this, and so we can move on to some trim on other parts of the building. What I'm going to use for trim on this is this 1x6, because the outside edge of the siding and stuff from each of the floors is really thick. So, I just take that and I put that on the outside edge of that deck or that overhang all the way around and paint everything in that same white color. And now we have that whole under edge and ceiling to that area together. Now, one side on this whole structure also was one layer of siding short. I fixed that one end before, but I came back and added this piece of siding to that. And once that was painted white, then I'm going to go ahead and start on all the trim on the rest of this building. And kind of starting from the top, working my way down, because that's how the pieces work out. So I do this second floor corner on this with two pieces, and then I do the piece that comes back on the bottom of that floor where it meets the stucco wall. And then the two pieces on the bottom corner come up and meet that piece. So if I do it in this order, I don't have to worry about how, the pieces are ending, and they just cut everything flush, basically. And then I put these other two small pieces on this end on either side of those lower windows, and that's everything on this end. So now we just got to continue going around the rest of the building. Underneath that overhang, there's also red trim around that's above that dock, and I'm just going to go ahead and start adding all that trim around this here. In this octagon area here, I had to use a 2x6 instead of a 1x6, because where I cut the plastic, it was just a wide open gap there, and this helped cover it a little better using a thicker board. And then this whole upper story here, we've got to put this 1x4 red trim on the bottom of that upper floor. Then on the other end, I'm coming back and starting from the top down, just like I did on the other end. I do this outside corner and then this one strip between the two floors. Then I do this outside corner on the lower first floor. And then that leaves me with two small pieces that, on that end on either side of the doors to finish out that floor. And then once that lower corner is also done, I can come on across and add this piece underneath the overhang and between the freight doors in that corner as well. And here's just a picture of that end where I added those last two pieces on this end. Basically, that's pretty much the trim, at least up to the point where we are at this point. This back side, I had a couple more pieces to add in to finish this back side as well, but basically that's pretty much the trim. Now above the ceiling to support the roof, I need to create some type of a header system up there to take the roof up to. And what I'm doing for the main beam on top of that is kind of sanding down the two edges to give me a point on that, to give me somewhat of an angle down on either side. And then I glue that on top these uprights, which I spaced according to the space where I put those cross members in the ceiling of the building before. And that's how I measured all this out. And also, once I mount those, the ends of these are 13 feet in from the ends of the building. And that gives me my flat roof off of either end as well. And now, this is how we left this octagon building in the last, episode of this story here. And, I'm going to continue on and work some with it. So now, I'm just going to go ahead and start by putting white paint on it because I want to trim all the windows, and it's just easier to paint this prior to doing that. So I put white paint on everything. I did come back and file the corners down just a little bit and get them right. And then I start the window trim. I do the top and the bottom to all the windows, and then I come back and do the sides, and this is all the inside framing of the windows. And that leaves the outside framing. So I come back just like I've done all the other windows in the rest of this building, and I do the two side pieces because the top and bottom trim overlap these on both sides. And I do that to all three windows, and then come back and do the top and bottom piece of that outside trim, and that's all the trim that gets done to these windows. Now behind that you can also see, it's dark in this picture, and what I had done was I came back and painted the whole inside of this black because I didn't want to be able to see through those windows and see the basswood and stuff in the back of this room, so this stops that from happening. So then, with the side pieces and all that, we go ahead and put glass in the windows at that point in time, and I don't need into the interior anymore of this building, so we can move on to the next thing, which basically is the roof. And this is the way we left the assembly before, and this slides down in between the walls of the top. Now there's an overhang on this roof, so what I need to do is make another piece that sits on top of this that gives me about 1.5 feet, 2 foot of overhang. So I went through all my plastic and I found this, and it's real thin, and I like so I'm just going to go ahead and use this. So I set that piece on top of this and cut this out so that it had it's around 2 foot of overhang. And I go ahead and cut this piece out. Now to put this piece on top of the other piece, remember with the center post in there, I'm going to have to cut a hole in the middle of this so it'll slide down over that so that I can glue this on top of that wood. And once I do that, I just come back and I'm going to go ahead and glue that into space. And since the hole was a little large, I need to measure all these sides to make sure this is centered really well so that I have an equal overhang on all the sides of this. But basically, that's, where we need to be with this, and the top is ready to mount onto the building. So, I just go ahead and play with this a little bit more because I want this to be right. And I got all the edges. One was slightly bigger than the other, so I came back and just toned that down or cut it down a little bit. And then I go ahead and just, wood glue this wooden piece into the top of the ceiling of the main structure part of this. And then underneath of that, I come back and paint that white to match the under trim of all the roof of the rest of the building. And then, that's as far as I need to go with that. Now on the center post of this, that comes down to each of those corners, there would have been a wooden piece to support the roof, a rafter basically. And I went through all my wood and I found this real small square stock. And I'm just coming through and putting the four sides on to begin with, and because the inside pieces of all those will have to be cut a different way. And I glue those all into place and then trim the tops so that, they kind of come to a point. Now there's still a little bit of trim that needs to be done under here, and now that that white is painted under the overhang, I can come back and wrap this whole structure at the top with a piece of red trim. And then the trim on the corners, I can come back and put all that into place. And remember, the roof of the building comes up around the sides of this, and there's only about a foot on this backside exposed, so I don't necessarily need to put the trim all the way from the top to the bottom on this. Now on the main building, you know, there's a overhang of 2 foot on the roof of that from the main building too. So I came back and cut all these pieces of, you know, this beadboard basically, and I'm just coming through. I'm going to start at one end and wrap my way around the building all in one direction. So I cut 45s of this on the corners and let it overhang the building by about 1.5 feet so I can glue it to the building. And then I come back and glue my first piece of this into place. And then the next one I'm just cutting a 45 on, and you know, the upper side of this, what I do is I cut so that the face side of this is almost at a point like a 45. Even though they're not going to be meeting on top, it kind of creates a trough on top, but it allows me to get a good clean joint in this. And I just come through and, you know, wrap the building around as I go. I do my second piece and I come back and do the other end of this. And then, you know, I did start here and came back from one corner in because I don't have enough of this pre-cut to do one piece on that end. So I'm going to end up doing 2 pieces because I don't want to waste plastic. And then I come back and, you know, glue all the other pieces on there, and basically that's the overhang on the entire building. So once that's in place, I need to come back and put some paint underneath there to match the rest of the building. So I break out the white paint that I've been using on the entire rest of the building and come through and paint that whole underhang under there. And once that's in place, then I can come back with this red trim and start the last pieces of red trim on this building. And you know, I only had a couple of pieces of this left, so I did the 2 long sides, and what I had left was just little tiny short pieces. So I'm just going to go ahead and, you know, I'm going to have to paint one more piece of trim for this. So I just go ahead and do that, you know, and I'm just going to let this dry while I work on other things so I can put the 2 end pieces on, and that would be the last trim that goes on this building at that point. Now the top of this, where all the, you know, where that octagon structure sits on this, when I put this overhang material and stuff on there, you know, the cross members that I had put in are just a little bit lower. So I went through my balsa wood, or basswood actually, and found this piece that's the same thickness, and I'm just going to come back and mount this in there so that, you know, my building isn't going to be sitting on an angle once I mount this in there. And now we need to start working on the, you know, the rafters and stuff for the roof itself. And I went through and found this balsa wood, which is really nice and thick and should give good support to any roof I decide to put on there. And I just come through and cut a whole bunch of strips. Yeah, and there's some longer than the others. The ends on the corners will actually need slightly longer ones, and you know, I've cut way too many of these, but I've got plenty to work from, and I've got boards to use later on for something else. And I just come back and cut one end piece as a kind of a template for cutting the rest. And I cut one side piece and use this as a template too. I do go through and check it in several places and make sure they're all going to be exactly the same. And then I come back once I've got several of those cut, and I just start, you know, gluing all those into place. And I just continue on, you know, I do the one end member and I do the 2 end corner members on the other end of the building. And once I have those in place, you know, this is just a wide span, so I decided I wanted to put one in the center of this as well so that it has good support in the center of this as well. And I'm going to leave the other side open until I get that octagon building, because the roof meets that down there, and I don't want to put something in my way for making that happen. So at this point in time, that's where we're going to leave the video this week. You know, there's still a lot to do on this building, but you know, and the octagon building is not glued in here. It's just setting in place at this point in time. But, you know, I just wanted to get a look at where this is going and give me a good sense of what the building is like. So there you have this week's segment of the Weaver train station. This is coming along really well now. I think one more episode we may be able to get this finished. We still have quite a bit to do on this structure. You know, you saw me paint that last piece of trim. There are a couple more pieces of trim we need to put on the main building itself. We have all those roofs to finish, and the turret on that was just kind of setting in place. You know, there's still some more work to do on that. And I found some stuff in all of my roofing material in plastic that I think I may use for the roof. I'm not sure. I don't think this was what was actually there. I don't know if there was wood shingles. It could have been a slate, but I found another roof that I think I'm going to use on it because it's kind of period oriented to that time period that I'm building of this structure. So I'm going to use it. I think it'll make the building look good too. But in any case, you know, it is coming along. I like when I get to this phase of building structures because it gets exciting when you can see, you know, what it's going to look like. I don't know if this is a proper term to use, but I'm kind of a visionary. Actually, I am a visionary. But anyway, you know, I can see where it's going in the future. You know, I know what it's going to look like when it's done, and I start to get excited about that. And, you know, to me, that's what scratch building's all about. When you get something to a final point that just like, wow, you know, this is pretty cool, I did that. You know, and it's not perfect, you know, but it suits me just fine. And it's a nice looking structure. And I sure as heck can't find this out there in kit form anywhere, so I'm going to have something that nobody else has on my layout. And it really will be a nice part of the Belington scene when it's done, because there's a number of structures. You've seen me build some of them. I have one more station to build for Belington before those structures are done. And I don't know, somewhere down the road there was another hotel that I may build that was in Belington. It was on the next street over from the train street there, but it was called Lucerne Hotel. And it was a Victorian structure. It was 2 stories and a pitched roof that had, you know, alcoves in it as well, and a house that attached to it that belonged to the owners. And, you know, back in the day, Henry Ford, Thomas Edison, Mr. Firestone, and, you know, a number of famous people used to come here to Belington. And from here they would go on hunting and fishing expeditions. So they stayed in a Lucerne Hotel. But it's a nice big hotel. You know, it's really period for that period of time too. So it may be a structure I do later on, I'm not sure. But, you know, we'll see where we go from here. I would like to take all these structures and put them in some type of a diorama or a, you know, a small layout that I could show during some nostalgia days and those kinds of things here in town, so people can, you know, get a little bit of an idea of some of the buildings and the history of this town. In any case, I'll quit rambling at this point in time. Thank you for coming back and sharing this time with me. I do appreciate it. Thank you to my new subscribers, and if you're not subscribed, please do so. It helps my analytics and keeps me around on this channel doing things, knowing that people out there kind of appreciate what I do or can learn something from it, you know. You know, it's all about scratch building, and I say this in every video, and I'm going to continue to say it over and over and over again. But, you know, there's a couple buildings even I'm intimidated by, and I may start to get in one of those here pretty soon. It's a nice big hotel and station that we're in Grafton, West Virginia, and they may take me the better part of a year to build. I mean, they're just very ornate, nice big structures. And you know, so I guess to some degree I can understand being intimidated by scratch building, but you know, the only way you're ever going to do it is just jump out there and do it. You know, start with something small, build an outhouse, a shed, or go back through my videos and find some of the really simple, you know, 1 or 2 day structures that I've built that you can use along your model railroad. And you know, they add a lot to the detail of the railroad, where the details are what brings the model railroad to life, you know, and it gives it for a purpose for being the tracks on the wood or a styrofoam, whatever you're using for a base. And you know, that's what it's all about, is just enjoying the hobby. Happy model railroading.